Let us quickly ground ourselves in what is actually happening. Valentine was supposed to be heading to Geneva to meet with Z, ready to blow the whistle on the rogue operations, the cold fusion prototype misuse, and the dirty dealings involving Jens and Ross. But instead of finding salvation or a sympathetic ear, Valentine walked straight into a trap meticulously laid out by Jack. Jack intercepted him, bypassed all official protocols, and threw Valentine into a completely undocumented, off-the-books black site, a ghost prison for ghost operatives. But Jack made one catastrophic miscalculation. He did not realize that by throwing Valentine into this abyss, he was putting him in the exact same facility in a cell right next to none other than Jason. This is where it gets interesting, guys. Let us break down the sheer arrogance of Jack. Jack operates on the assumption that isolation equals defeat. He genuinely believed that if he could just cut Valentine off from the world, strip him of his resources, his money, and his ability to manipulate the board, Valentine would simply wither away in the dark. Jack wanted to protect the secrets of the Cold Fusion project and keep Ross insulated from any blowback. He viewed Valentine as a rogue chess piece that just needed to be removed from the board. But what Jack failed to understand is that men like Valentine do not need a board to play the game. They are the game. And when you strip a master manipulator of his external tools, you force him to rely entirely on his intellect and his voice. Imagine the psychological weight of that moment for Valentine. He arrives expecting a high-level negotiation with Z, only to hear the heavy, metallic clang of a black site cell door shutting behind him. There are no records of his arrest. No lawyer is coming. Carly cannot save him. Charlotte does not know where he is. For a brief second, Jack probably thought he had won. But Valentine is not a man who breaks under isolation. He is a man who assesses his environment. And his environment happened to include a neighboring cell holding a man who had sacrificed his own freedom to protect a child. The moment Valentine realized Jason was sitting in the dark right next to him, the entire power dynamic of that prison shifted, even if the guards did not know it yet. We have to talk about the incredible poetic justice of putting Jason and Valentine in this specific situation. These two men have spent years circling each other, often standing on completely opposite sides of the moral and criminal spectrum in our beloved town. Valentine is the aristocratic, silver-tongued spy who uses leverage and secrets as his weapons. Jason is the stoic, pragmatic enforcer who uses silence and kinetic action to solve problems. They are oil and water. Yet, Jack inadvertently forced them into a space where their differences no longer mattered. Stripped of their titles, their tailored suits, and their leather jackets, they were just two fathers trapped in a cage while their children were left vulnerable to monsters on the outside. The exchange of information between these two isolated men is the true turning point of this entire storyline. Valentine, knowing that Jason is essentially a loaded gun waiting for a target, begins to feed him the reality of the outside world. Valentine updates Jason on everything. He tells him about Ross, the stolen cold fusion research, the depth of the corruption, and, most importantly, he tells him about Rocco. He tells Jason that despite Jason taking the fall for Rocco shooting Ross, the boy is still actively being hunted. Rocco is still in the crosshairs. Information in a black site is the most valuable currency in existence, and Valentine spent all of his capital to buy Jason's attention. If you have been watching Jason for as long as I have, you know exactly what happens when you threaten someone he loves, or worse, when you render his sacrifices meaningless. Jason willingly went into that black site. He confessed to a shooting he did not commit solely to protect Rocco and keep the boy's life from being destroyed. He accepted his fate because he believed the transaction was complete, his freedom for Rocco's safety. When Valentine shattered that illusion, when he revealed that Ross was still coming for the kid, something inside Jason fundamentally shifted. The passive acceptance of his imprisonment evaporated in an instant. The corrupt agency did not just break a deal. They made Jason realize that staying in that cell was no longer an act of protection, but an act of negligence. This brings us to the evolution of their dynamic, which is arguably the most fascinating layer of this narrative. They are not friends. Let us be very clear about that. We are not watching a buddy cop movie unfold. But what we are witnessing is the forging of an alliance built on absolute, ruthless pragmatism. They share a mutual enemy in Jack and Ross. They share a mutual goal in protecting their families. Valentine has the strategic knowledge of how the rogue agency operates, the passwords, the hierarchy, and the grand design of the cold fusion plot. Jason has the tactical brilliance, the physical capability, and the sheer willpower to break through concrete and steel. Together, they form a perfectly balanced weapon. The agency thought they were containing two threats, but they actually initiated a chemical reaction. Now, I have to pause and ask myself, am I giving this alliance too much credit? Could this just be a temporary marriage of convenience that will dissolve the second they taste fresh air? If the cell doors magically opened, would Jason just walk away and leave Valentine to fend for himself? Or, worse, would Valentine try to sell Jason out to secure his own pardon? It is a valid counterargument. Their history is littered with betrayal and mistrust. But I genuinely believe this time is different. Why? Because the stakes have transcended their personal egos. The threat to Charlotte and Rocco binds them in a way that money or territory never could. They both know that if they turn on each other, Ross wins. And neither of these men is willing to let their children pay the price for their rivalry. Let us talk about the escape itself, because it tells us everything we need to know about how Jason's mind works. Jason does not panic. He does not throw himself against the bars in a fit of rage. He watches. He listens. He calculates the patrol routes, the shift changes, the blind spots in the cameras, and the digital weaknesses of the security system. For a man who is often dismissed by his enemies as just a mob enforcer, Jason possesses an elite, almost terrifying level of tactical intelligence. To him, an off-the-books maximum security black site is not an impenetrable fortress. It is just a puzzle with a very specific violent solution. It was never a question of if Jason could break out. It was only ever a question of when he would decide it was necessary. When the moment of execution finally arrived, it was a masterclass in precision. Jason exploited the exact flaw in the security grid he had been studying. But the most crucial detail of this breakout is that Jason did not leave alone. He actively chose to rescue Valentine. He broke the system, opened his own cage, and then made sure Valentine was right there with him before they vanished into the shadows. Why? Because Jason knows he cannot navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of the rogue agency alone. He needs Valentine's mind just as much as Valentine needs Jason's muscle. They slipped out of that facility like ghosts, leaving Jack and his guards staring at empty cells, completely unaware of the storm they had just unleashed. Think about what this means for the people back home. Ross and Jack are currently operating under the delusion of total control. They are moving their pieces around the board, setting traps, trying to kidnap Charlotte, sending poison vials, and hunting down Rocco, all while believing their biggest obstacles are safely locked away in a dark hole. They are playing a standard game of chess. But Jason and Valentine are not playing chess anymore. They are playing Russian roulette, and they are bringing the loaded gun directly to Jack's doorstep. The sheer panic that will set in when the agency realizes that their two most dangerous prisoners have simply evaporated into thin air is going to be cinematic gold. The profound irony here is that the corrupt faction of the agency engineered its own destruction. If Jack had just let Valentine meet with Z, maybe Valentine would have been tied up in endless bureaucratic hearings. If they had put Jason in a standard, documented federal prison, he might have stayed there to honor his sacrifice. But by trying to be clever, by trying to hide their dirty secrets in an undocumented black site, they removed all the rules. When you put men like Jason and Valentine in a place where the law does not exist, you free them to operate without any moral or legal constraints. You strip away their need to play nice. The agency built a pressure cooker, threw in the most volatile ingredients imaginable, and then acted surprised when it exploded in their faces. So, where does this leave us? Jason and Valentine are currently ghosts. No one knows where they are, how they got out, or what their exact plan is. But we know their destination. They are heading back to our town, not just to rescue their kids, but to burn Ross and Jack's entire operation to the ground. They are bringing a war to the doorstep of the people who thought they were untouchable. But the lingering question that keeps me awake at night is this. Once the dust settles, once Ross is defeated and the children are safe, what happens to this unholy alliance? Do they shake hands and walk away? Or does the beast they have awakened in each other demand one final confrontation? I guess we will just have to wait and see.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.